Hello, everybody. Welcome back to some more of the mystery book. We are on part two of chapter 4. So, talking about the COVID-19 and some little interesting things about that. All right. It's always good to speculate some of the theories, possibilities, and what makes more sense when you connect dots to certain things. It's not always just coincidental. All right. So, the lockdowns in our country started in March 2020. But on July 9th, 2020, Klaus Schwab, with a new co-author, Terry Mallert, published a new book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, searching desperately for a way to rebrand his globalist agenda. The Fourth Industrial Revolution never took off as a catchy idea, so maybe the Great Reset would have more luck. However, Klaus Schwab couldn't avoid his tendency to engage in literary gee whiz. Ain't technology brought to you by really smart people? And aren't they so great? And did I mention okay, that was not, okay, I need to try and do this perfect. Okay. A tendency to engage in literary gee whiz. Gee whiz, ain't technology brought to you by really smart people great? And did I mention we need a new political system to handle all these changes? Let's start with the cheery introduction. Indoctrination, introduction. Induction. Okay. At the time of writing, June 2020, the pandemic continues to worsen globally. Many of us are pondering when things will return to normal. Nothing will ever return to the broken sense of normalcy that prevailed prior to the crisis, because the coronavirus pandemic marks a fundamental inflection point in our global trajectory. Some analysts call it a major bifurcation. Others refer to a deep crisis of biblical proportions. But the essence remains the same. The world, as we knew it in the early months of 2020, is no more, dissolved in the context of the pandemic. We're now more than 2 years past the time Schwab was writing. Well, actually, 4 years. This book was published in 2022, I guess. Yeah. Okay, I was writing. And I want you to think about how he claims the world has forever changed. Let me ask you, are you still married to the same person? Do your dogs still need to be walked? Does the litter box for the cat still need to be emptied? Much of your life probably seems the same, except for the insane people wearing their masks as they drive alone in their cars. Yeah. I've never understood that whatsoever. I mean, have you seen people do that before? Like they're driving alone. They're just by themselves in their car. They have a mask on, driving in their car by themselves. I'm sorry. Everybody has their own choice to do what they want, but that never made any sense to me whatsoever. Or the expense of gas and the inflation at the supermarkets. Yes, that stuff definitely changed. But that's not because of COVID-19. Those are man-made problems brought about by bad decisions at the top level of our government, and you don't need to be an insurrectionist to believe that. Schwab doesn't even claim that the world before the pandemic was good, as shown by snarky lines like, nothing will ever return to the broken sense of normalcy that prevailed prior to the crisis. Can somebody who isn't clinically insane tell me what's meant by that line? You thought the time before the pandemic was normal, but in reality it was broken? Is that like the old joke about there being no such thing as military intelligence, business ethics, or jumbo shrimp? The book is divided into 3 sections, with the first being titled Macro Reset. You see, it wasn't enough to just be a reset or even a great reset. It had to be a macro reset to really get your attention. See how skillfully you are being manipulated by really smart people? And who is coming to save the day? It's not any single person, it's big government. What a surprise. In the words of John Micklethwait and Adrian Woolridge, the COVID-19 pandemic has made government important again. Not just powerful again, look at those once mighty companies begging for help, but also vital again. It matters enormously whether your country has a good health service, competent bureaucrats, and sound finances. Good government is the difference between living and dying. One of the great lessons of the past 5 centuries in Europe and America is this: acute crises contribute to boosting the power of the state. It's always been the case, and there is no reason why it should be different with COVID-19. Wait just a Texas minute there. Can you believe Klaus Schwab is saying that in every acute crisis of the past 5 centuries in Europe or America, it was the governments that provided the solution? These people do not like individual action or achievement. Their hatred for strong individuals literally oozes out of them. How about this line? Look at those once mighty companies begging for help. Does that seem like something a psychologically well-balanced person would say? No, it's like they enjoy breaking down the individual, the little guy. They love it when you are dependent on them. That's what they want. They want to make you suffer and then go back begging for help. And that's exactly how that line comes across. And just for my sake, can anybody point me to a single country in the history of the world that can be said to have had competent bureaucrats? To me, it seems that the best life is achieved by maximum avoidance of any government bureaucrats. I'll take sending a package from the UPS store over a U.S. postal office any day of the week, even if it costs me a little bit more. Efficiency matters, but we shouldn't grumble if we have to pay a little more for it. Schwab's intention in writing these books seems to be to make you feel powerless and beg for his chain of authority to be placed around your neck so you can be ridden like some domesticated animal. Consider how optimistic and upbeat you feel after reading this passage. If no one power can enforce order, our world will suffer from a global order deficit. Unless individual nations and international organizations succeed in finding solutions to better collaborate at the global level, we risk entering an age of entropy, in which retrenchment, fragmentation, anger, and parochialism will increasingly define our global landscape, making it less intelligible and more disorderly. The pandemic crisis has both exposed and exasperated this sad state of affairs. The magnitude and consequence of the shock it has inflicted are such that no extreme scenario can now be taken off the table. No extreme scenario can now be taken off the table. Italics added by the author. It's taken 2.5 books, but Schwab, in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, laid out his plan to deal with the dissidents. No extreme scenario can be taken off the table. What might those extreme scenarios be? The shutting down of opposing voices on social media, deleting a person's email list, cutting off a person's access to financial payment services, denying bank services to an individual because of their political beliefs, using law enforcement agencies like the FBI or IRS to harass dissidents, the creation of detention camps to be utilized for those who deny health mandates or simply protest the plans of the government, the mass execution of those who defy government orders. Do any of these seem too extreme? Schwab himself wrote that no extreme scenario can now be taken off the table, so that's why we ask. When people tell you their plans, I suggest you listen to what they say. I cannot presume the slightest bit of goodwill when Schwab writes that no extreme scenario can now be taken off the table. It's like hiring an employee who tells you he's been fired from previous jobs because all his bosses were jerks, or starting to date a woman who tells you she's never quite managed the monogamy thing. When the end comes, you really shouldn't be so surprised. However, like a frog being slowly cooked to death in a pot of water placed over a low flame, you might not notice the creeping heat of global tyranny until it's too late. That's why you probably need Schwab to put it all in perspective for you. Global governance is commonly defined as the process of cooperation among transnational actors aimed at providing responses to global problems, those that affect more than one state or region. It encompasses the totality of institutions, policies, norms, procedures, and initiatives through which nation states try to bring more predictability and stability to their responses to transnational challenges. This definition makes it clear that any global effort on any global issue or concern is bound to be toothless without the cooperation of national governments and their ability to act and legislate their aims. Color me skeptical, but I'm not seeing Schwab put any limits on what governments can do to their citizens, or the pressure to be applied to average people by institutions, policies, norms, procedures, and initiatives. Their plans sound reminiscent of some take it or leave it big tech contract when you want their new phone, computer, or app. The best case scenario, if you defy them, is you might end up without an internet connection, a phone, a bank account, or a job. From history, we have learned the worst case scenario for those who defy authoritarian control. They end up in jail, brutally tortured, and often dead. As we continue, I will show you exactly how Klaus Schwab and his cronies are putting in just such a system. They want you to believe it's for your own good, or it's for the children, or to save the sea turtles. They know better than you do because they're smart. And whom did Schwab choose to praise in the COVID-19 crisis? Not the scientific dissidents, such as those who signed the Great Barrington Declaration, who would never have sent elderly people with the virus back into nursing homes. The same dissidents who would have made the decision to allow the use of drugs like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, given their decades-long history of safe usage, likely saving the lives of hundreds of thousands in the United States and millions around the globe. No, that didn't happen. Klaus Schwab saw fit to praise the Chinese. Yes, the same Chinese communists who in all likelihood created the virus and then allowed for its spread by locking down internal travel from Wuhan, while allowing it to the rest of the world. The same Chinese communists whose opening to the world was led by globalists Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski. Kissinger and Brzezinski saw fit to teach the Chinese how to set up an economy run by scientists, engineers, and managers, while at the same time depriving their citizens of any political freedoms. The Chinese citizens could have a fat belly and an expensive car, but they'd better have an empty head when it came to criticizing their leaders. from Schwab's COVID-19, The Great Reset. All these prompted Kishore Mahbubani, an influential analyst of the rivalry that opposes the US and China, to argue that COVID-19 has reversed the roles of both countries in terms of dealing with disasters and supporting others. While in the past, the US was always the first to arrive with aid where assistance was needed, like on the 26th of December 2004, when a major tsunami hit Indonesia. This role now belongs to China, he says. In March 2020, China sent to Italy 31 tons of medical equipment, ventilators, masks, and protective suits that the EU could not provide. Mahbubani says that it is their choices, China and the US, that will determine who wins the rivalry contest, and that those will be based on the cold calculus of reason to work out cost-benefit analysis of what both the US and China have to offer them. Does it sound like Schwab has a nation crush on China? It does to me. As others have already said, the globalists love China. It has enabled them to put their ideas into practice on a massive scale without regard to human rights. Like our founding fathers, I believe our rights are an inheritance from God, who loves us above all things, and the attempt to create a society devoid of such rights strikes me as truly of the devil. I wish I didn't have to resort to such extreme language, but if I didn't, I'd be lying to you. I'm telling you what I think. We are not just the physical. All of us have to answer for our actions in this world. We are spirit, and the attempt to deny such a reality is the path to suffering in hell. Look at history and tell me I'm wrong. The fascists of Italy, the Nazis of Germany, and the communists of the Soviet Union all sought to restrict the rights of people and place the government as their god. When ideologues get in charge and tell you that they must temporarily do terrible things, the atrocities just keep piling on. It's as predictable as the law of gravity. As was this comment from Schwab about how the pandemic, in which millions around the world died unnecessarily, should be viewed as an opportunity by those concerned about climate change. Some leaders and decision makers who were already at the forefront of the fight against climate change may want to take advantage of the shock inflicted by the pandemic to inflict long-lasting and wider environmental changes. They will, in effect, make good use of the pandemic by not letting the crisis go to waste. A famous statement contributed to Chicago Mayor and Obama Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel. The extortion of different leaders, ranging from HRH, the Prince of Wales, to Andrew Cuomo, to Build Back Better, goes in that direction. As I've said before, the answer to any question for these globalists seems to be more globalism. Got a pandemic? How about managing it badly, then claiming you need more powerful government for the next time? These people really are shameless. Schwab also probably didn't realize that Governor Cuomo of New York would resign in shame on August 24th, 2021, under a cloud of sexual assault allegations, likely scuttling any chance he had of becoming president of the United States in either 2024 or 2028. Maybe Schwab is betting on Prince Charles becoming King of England, which he is now. So, where he will most likely be the least popular king in English history. I sometimes wonder if Klaus Schwab gets angry that he just can't find any good henchmen. That is the universal problem of most villains throughout history. It seems that idiocy is just part of the typical operating system of your average globalist. But not to worry. Like any good supervillain, the globalists don't like to brood on past failures, but instead always look forward to the next wonder weapon, like a laser to blow up the moon, or in the real world, digital surveillance, to finally achieve that long-desired control over humanity, which we definitely see now more and more. Face recognition, digital surveillance, all of that stuff. I mean, that has been happening, and they have had that in some forms of that. But I think that they're definitely, I know that they're heightening that. Absolutely, they're heightening it and make it even more like more seeded throughout and just infesting every avenue. Now that information and communication technologies permeate almost every aspect of our lives and forms of social participation, any digital experience that we have can be turned into a product designed to monitor and anticipate our behavior. The risk of dystopia stems from this observation. In academia, it finds its expression in the research undertaken by scholars like Shoshana Zuboff. Her book, Surveillance Capitalism, warns about customers being reinvented as data sources, with surveillance capitalism transforming our company, politics, society, and our own lives by producing deeply anti-democratic asymmetries of knowledge and the power that accrues to knowledge. In plain language, that means when the government knows everything about you, then you are at their mercy. That's called an asymmetry of knowledge. In a better world, you know all about the government, but they know little about you. That's in a better world. Klaus Schwab really doesn't like that world and makes it clear. It's probably not a surprise that Schwab would turn to his favorite globalist academic, Yuval Noah Harari, in order to justify this new tool. He quotes the Harari argument at length. Surveillance technology is developing at breakneck speed, and what seemed science fiction 10 years ago is today old news. As a thought experiment, consider a hypothetical government that demands that every citizen wears a biometric bracelet that monitors body temperature, heart rate, 24 hours a day. We already have that. The resulting data is hoarded and analyzed by government algorithms. The algorithms will know that you are sick even before you know it. And they will also know where you've been and who you've met. The chains of infection could be drastically shortened and even cut altogether. In fairness to Harari's article from March 2020, he does go on to detail the danger of such a system in the hands of government that could also monitor your enthusiasm at a political rally or while watching certain shows, but the discussion doesn't seem to go any further than that. As an observation, I must note a pattern I've noticed in Schwab's work. He seems to acknowledge the arguments of the other side, but never really addresses them. Like he'll show that, okay, yeah, I heard, but then there's no answer to that. There's no, okay, I'm hearing you, but I don't care about answering or having some kind of, yeah. He strikes me much like that boss who pretends to acknowledge the complaints of his employees, but never fights against upper management over their decisions, or even never gives a shit. In Schwab's case, though, he's just pretending to be the manager. He's really angling to be the boss. I don't know if he's angling to be the boss, but I know that he's definitely a front man for some of the main players that are behind it. He wants to be the one you complain to about being fired. But in reality, he's the one who made the decision. Okay, so we're going to leave it there. And then we'll start chapter 4, part 3 in the next video. Peace out.